Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about the De-Sapient-ification cyberjunk overlords plan to extinguish consciousness, and also Neofeud 2 updates. Um, yes, so obviously that's a bit of a scary title, but um, mostly it's not necessarily about this exact scene happening in the next month or something. But this is actually it's like actually part of that is showing off random Neofeud 2, my cyberpunk sequel to the Neofeud 1 in-game scenes, but also like a somewhat of a clickbait, I suppose, to get people to check the video out, and also uh, talk about some trends I've been like kind of keeping a close eye on for a long time, but also that like seem to be getting more pertinent nowadays, particularly with regards to AI. I didn't put the term AI in there, but actually like the AI, or what I call Degen AI, um, like degenerative AI, sometimes called Gen AI. I don't really like the term AI anymore, but there's reasons why it's used and it must be used. There's actually a book that I think is like a good jumping off point. I was just checking this out. I'm not read it in its entirety myself, but this is a book that just came out or is coming out called The AI Con: How to Fight Big Tech's Hype and Create the Future We Want. A smart, incisive look at the technology sold as artificial intelligence, the drawbacks and pitfalls of technology sold under this banner, and why it's crucial to recognize the many ways in which AI hype covers for a small set of power-hungry actors at work and in the world. Yeah. So, anyways, just like a random shout out to that, because that it deals with a lot of the stuff that I talk about. Also, before I forget, another place to follow or person to follow is Tim Gabbard, who is the founder of the Distributed AI Research Institute, ex Google employee, has worked at all the biggest, or working at some of the biggest tech companies in the world, and does not work there anymore for reasons, and is adamant critic of a lot of what is called AI. And they also check out the DAIR, Distributed AI Research Institute. Anyways, so but back to this. Yeah. So why did I call it De-Sapient-ification? I know it's like a complicated portmanteau. It is a complicated neologism I have just manufactured from my brain. But as a science fiction writer, that's just something that we have to constantly. That's just something you have to constantly be doing, is coming up with fancy newfangled buzzwords that are not even in existence. They're buzzwords for the future. And my computer is my computer is de-sapientifying me as I have to try to figure out how to stop it from lagging, and my brain flies out of my skull. Anyways, but why did I call it de-sapientification? Because like in this scene in Neofeud 2, obviously you have there is an army of non-human, right, metal and plastic and silicon police officers of some kind, and then there's a larger militarized police entity behind that. And then you have on the other side vast quantities. Now, Neofeud, this is like it's set in the universe of Neofeud and Neofeud 2, obviously. So in Neofeud and Neofeud 2, it's kind of it's unusual because there are like conscious machines. There are, there's a hippie Terminator in Neofeud 1. He actually shows up in Neofeud 2 as well. He makes a reappearance in Neofeud 2. There's also there's like iRobot, like a lot of Neofeud's very tongue in cheek. It's very satirical and comical, but then also very serious at the same time. there's the Matrix Squiddy robot. You know, the many limbed, many robot tentacled um, uh, species of robot that chases Morpheus, Neo, and Trinity as they, you know, bank and dive and fly through the post-apocalyptic Earth's sewers. And so we have like that. So, but he's a rescue. Like it's a character that kind of resembles that as a homage. But he is a rescue bot. And so all these characters though, but they're all suffering. Um, uh, you know, all of these like average masses, the 99% of the people. But you know, in Neofeud, they kind of like there are machines that have consciousness. They're all for. It's weird because like in Neofeud there are conscious machines, not ChatGPT, not Gemini, not Grok, right? But there are conscious machines in Neofeud and in Neofeud 2. That is the fictional part. That's like definitely not what is happening right now. Like so, it's actually I feel it's a little bit of a not a buyer's remorse. It's more like science fiction writer's remorse. It's like imaginary literary future imaginers regrets. It's imaginers regrets. You know, I'm like maybe I should have thought about that, but it's like it is what it is. Um, but in Neofeud and 1 and 2, there are sentient machines. There are sentient half human, half animal chimeras. They're not furries. They're actually manufactured in bioweapons laboratories with human and animal DNA. Oh, you could be a furry too. There actually are furries in Neofeud 1 and 2 as well. That actually comes up. Those are humans who just like sometimes wear fursuits or view themselves as have anthropomorphic vulpine or lapine or dracine avatars. I know that's not the word for dragon-like, but what's up, Alien? But you know, so there's conscious machines, there's conscious non-human human-like creatures. They're called chimeras in Neofeud 1. And then there's also humans, just regular humans of various kinds of humans. There's you know, lighter skin humans, darker skin humans, older humans. There's immortal humans or transhumans. There are transhumans, and there are also like transhumans. There's all kind of humans in the world. But most of them are not rich. The humans have a better standing in the world than the basically corporate eugenics lab failures that get discarded on the way to immortal trillionaires attempting to build the Ubermensch. Those are the chimeras. So so the humans are better treated in the society. They're less marginalized on average than those people who are not full humans that were manufactured. Then there's also manufactured conscious machines, and those are also treated lesser for, you know, because of their situation. And so the robots, they call them silicons in Neofeud. They all have to you know, rise up together. But I guess the thing about the robots in Neofeud is that they do have consciousness, but the neo-feudal elite, right? The powers that in the floating neo-feudal Himmelschlossen is the German word. The aerial, they call them the aerial Himmelschlossen is the floating palaces above the cratered wasteland of what used to be the EU. And in the U.S., they just have, you know, levitating Trump and Clinton, Bush, Gates, Walton, you know, aerial skyscraper palaces, the Stratoplex. And those people don't really want the conscious machines of Neofeud 1 and 2. They don't want the conscious machines to count as human. That's the whole there's a whole aspect of Neofeud. there's a sentience test, right? It's kind of like it's a consciousness test that they apply to the characters. Let me see if I can get an image of that. It's like, are you sure the test is 100% right all the time? The system is stacked against us non-humans. You know that. We can't get good work. We get laughed at on the street. Most of us live in a giant garbage heap. Why couldn't a test be rigged against us? Who would stop the human-controlled government? This is like from a scene in Neofeud 1. But it's like there's a major part of Neofeud 1 that deals with the means testing. The way, one of the ways in which populations, right, masses are controlled by torment nexus aficionados that rule unjustly from the top, is to create, right, to create systems, to create methods, to create technologies of control. Obviously, slave plantations had their own forms of that, and actually a lot of the modern forms of control that were later implemented in non-black, but still heavily controlled factories. Like in the 1800s, the factory control was based on plantation, slave plantation control during the colonial period. The times, the division of labor, keeping people as separated as possible, like various kinds of gaslighting, browbeating, but there's another one is categorization of people, keeping them very like segregated. Like the first computers, right, the difference engine, like Charles Babbage's difference engine in the 1800s was actually, and the punch cards, the first computer technology was actually an early form of data collection that was specifically designed to control populations, right? To categorize and to classify, how many Anglo-Saxon or Teutonic individuals reside in the state of New York, or this West Coast or East Coast of the United States, or throughout the United States. How many teenagers from the ages from 13 to 18 of African, Chinese, they had a different word for that, but Asian descent. How many of these, to classify and categorize? IBM obviously worked with a particular type of German to further that same kind of eugenics. But it's not just about eugenics. That is a whole part, but it's also about controlling the populations, deciding who is allowed to go where at what time, right? And then also, who is fit to exist, right? Because this actually comes back to that concept of degeneration, right? It's, obviously, I said Degen AI. But part of that's a play on the concept of generative AI, right? Which were sold by Sam Altman, which were sold by, NVIDIA and the AI industry, which is that generative AI is producing so much, a vast cornucopia of art and writing and design and office work, and your Excel spreadsheet can be completed. Your emails can be written. Your husband and your wife, you can have AI be a loving husband or a loving wife or a loving non-binary partner for you, right? Have the AI, right? So it's generating all of it. It's actually degenerating your life. It's making it worse because now you're not living a lot of it, right? Now but it's also the quality of the output, right? It's actually like 90% of math problems were gotten wrong by ChatGPT. 2023, like it's constantly, there's so many citations of the Gen AI citing completely bogus, made up, airlines in lawsuit cases to made up citations. It's actually attributing quotes. Like Timnit Gebru just cited, she's one of the founders of these, serious critics, as somebody who has worked in the AI industry, or not the AI industry, but she worked at the biggest tech companies which use large language models, neural nets, stochastic parrots, high frequency, high speed plagiarism software, which is what AI is. And like there's actually quotes that generative AI is generating quotes where she says things like, um, OpenAI and Meta and these AI tools are revolutionary and only provide benefits to the world. And like she has never said that, but AI is generating false quotes, attributing them to all kinds of people, and that like obviously this is a huge problem, right? It's not a problem if you want to destroy the world or most people in it and most of the society. But if you want to have a somewhat functioning world out there, that's a big problem. Obviously, like several years, I think it was 2 years ago. I had a video just on like the rat private parts, giant rat private parts, where AI was generating falsified science articles, STEM and biotechnology research articles, right? In top peer reviewed science journals. It's already infiltrated that. So that's what. So I'm talking about Degen AI. I'm talking about like it's making the quality of information in general worse out in the world. It's making the internet worse, obviously, with so many ways, and it's making, but it's also making like human. And I've made this point before, I know, but like making it's actually causing your ability and your minds and human relationships and human everything, human thought, human creativity, human intellectual capacity, and also physical human bodies worse, especially when they use it in medical systems and when they use it in systems to deal with regulation and treating of the water and food supply, if they have any regulation, right? They're trying to use Gen AI. Currently, right, the administration is definitely trying to roll out using AI to manage the food, water, and if there are going to be any regulatory, any food inspections, right, to make sure the quality of the food doesn't have poison and toxins in it, your water doesn't, your air doesn't. They're going to replace it all with AI. So that means that it's not just like because you're using too much ChatGPT, you're not exercising your neurons enough. Although that is a problem. Like physically everything in the world is going to be degenerated by this. But coming back to that concept of degeneration, but it's also like, because the idea of the degeneration in 1800s colonial eugenics, social Darwinistic, obviously this is not there's not a lot of sciencing in that science, but that we now know. Of course, that it benefited a colonial imperial global system and the ruling class in the 1800s, so they didn't really care about that. The lack of factuality was not relevant, right? It's similar to now. The lack of empirical proof that the Gen AI is providing a net benefit and actually is becoming a benevolent, good Skynet. That's not factually proven, but it benefits this horrific 1% upper crust at the highest level of the Neofeudal ladder. So that idea of like degeneration was that we needed to catalog. So like and Stanford has been guilty of this for a long time. A lot of the first computational scientists, what were the people who were using the science, using the new tabulators, these new punch cards, the new difference engines, the first computational engines. They were targeted because there was a huge influx of Anglo-Saxon, like Irish, Italian, various other Europeans that not the first peoples, but the peoples who the first peoples from Europe who were dominant earlier on were worried that there were too many of the what was then deemed like lower quality. There were Europeans of lower quality genes, and also other peoples that were deemed of lower quality genes. Right, they were lower quality stock. Right, they were lower. That's the big thing with Neofeud too. All the eugenics and the racism that's directly entangled with that. Is so if we could calculate exactly how many millions of Irish were in our entering the United States, how many millions of Italians, how many millions of Catholics, how many millions of Germanic, Swedish, North. A lot of those people actually were viewed as lower at the time. They actually called the Norwegians were called China Swedes. They were called like they were sinicized in this weird way at this certain point because they were not of the particular stock that they wanted, the Londonian stock or whatever. It's a moving target, right? It's always this, the eugenicist colonial racist conceptions are always like a moving target for a global capitalist system that benefits the people at the very top. But the first computers were designed to basically limit the total amount of lower, undesirable genes, non-Anglo-Teutonic peoples, right? Or basically, if you were they said we couldn't let too many Irish in, so we have to track every single one of them. We couldn't let too many Italians in. Definitely we can't let too many Chinese in, because that could lead to degeneration of our civilization is directly tied to the breeding stock, right? That's a lot of what Elon, it's really been there forever in the West, but it's definitely in the forefront in like Elon and like the Trumpian and a lot of the Silicon Valley mindsets. Elon's dad is famously like big proponent of these concepts from apartheid South Africa. And so then like so the first computers, it's really gross, right? But actually, the first is very, 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 very dark track record for these wonderful machines that I run my streaming software and my game dev software like AGS on. But like they were actually first designed to, well, they weren't designed specifically for that, but that was one of their first major uses, was to track and catalog and control populations of humans for supremacist purposes, but it's not just for that, it's also to control the populations, to make sure that they were well managed, to get rid of those who were unwanted, disabled, what were deemed like sexual deviants, or obviously what's called now LGBTQ people had to be tracked and eliminated. Obviously RFK is now announcing as Trump's arch chancellor of eugenics, arch chancellor of anti-health. RFK is now announcing that the U.S. is going to be creating a list of all autistic people, and but the listing, right? That's actually just part and parcel of this historical system, right? Under this ableist colonial capital racist structure of tracking the individuals, controlling them, putting them in certain areas, right? Putting these in the camp, these in the mines, these in the, hyper exploited, alienated labor factories, whether that's for Model Ts or steel, or making punch card reader making the machines that make punch card readers to read the cards, the catalog, the number of unwanted people in our society. And so all of that, and if it starts out with the main character is a government bureaucrat, he's a social worker, right? And they have various tasks assigned to them, but his job is to assist the population under he's a sentient rights, Department of Sentient Services worker, who is supposed to be assisting people who need assistance in getting their life on track. They need food assistance. They need the robots, so they might need additional supplemental, the SEP, the supplemental energy program. People who need housing. There's veterans who have the hippie Terminator got his leg blown off in a war to destroy all left movements in Europe. The second Dresden firebombing, and he got his motherboard cooked by a thermion bomb and lost his leg to a depleted uranium round when he was sent there to exterminate all resistance to empire. and now he's an anti-war veteran, but he's also like getting denied his. So he's trying to like, so there's all these characters who are like trying to get help, but they're also being categorized, tracked, and systematically the system, the computer systems, and the bureaucrats that operate in that system of the ruling class's government are trying to cut every corner possible. It's very similar to what's happening right now. Cut every corner to make sure as few people get assistance as possible and as little assistance as possible to get everybody to get back to the front line or get back to private, get back into the assembly line, get back into the oppressed, grueling slave labor workshop, or pulling the triggers for, global imperialist conquest. Get back to GAZA and keep on unaliving them kids. You know what I'm saying? So, so what's up, Street Cat Love and Grant Scarborough? Anyways, so what I'm saying is that that idea of like the computer systems, because the topic is kind of like De-Sapient-ification, but the concept of degenerative genes. Let me just look at in the 1800s. I don't want to use AI. I don't want to degenerate my mind using this AI. So social degeneration, just to like you want more background on that. Social degeneration is a widely influential concept at the interface of the social and biological sciences in the 18th and 19th centuries. Scientific thinkers of note include Georges Louis Leclerc, Comte de Buffon, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, Immanuel Kant, who argued that humans shared a common origin but that had degenerated over time due to differences in climate. The theory provided an explanation of where humans came from and why people appeared differently from others. In contrast, degenerationists in the 19th century feared that civilization might be in decline and that causes of decline may lie in a biological change. These are pre-scientific concepts of heredity, Lamarckian emphasis, and a biological development through purpose and habit. Degeneration concepts were often associated with authoritarian political attitudes, including militarism, scientific racism, and preoccupation with eugenics. The theory originates in the racial concepts of ethnicity recorded in the writings of such medical scientists as Johann Blumenbach and Robert Knox. Anyways, there's a lot more to this. There's a huge amount of this. It underpins so much of many things. But but there's a fear, right, in a lot of the 1800s, or it's not really a fear. It's kind of like the fear of, it's like great replacement theory. It's like, is it a fear, or is it just like a drumming up, creating a boogeyman to justify more horrible actions that will benefit certain groups at the expense of others, basically, right? So it was like we can't allow any Chinese in. There was a Chinese question that was one of these. It came out John Swinton in 1870. He was actually a left socialist, labor rights leader from the U.S. East Coast, and he was a good friend of Karl Marx. He actually did a huge expose, pro-Marxian article in the late 1800s, and then he wrote the extremely xenophobic, disgusting screed, basically saying we cannot allow the powerful, successful, evolved American genes, the European genes, the stock of America would be degenerated by the Chinese blood polluting. He used these words like polluting, debasing, debauching, diluting, reducing the quality of the genes, and that was the greatest threat. It was not the threat of capital that was the greatest threat. The greatest threat was that the quality of our civilization would decrease because our genes, right, are breeding, like our hereditary power would be reduced by this Chinese blood. That's literally what was written by a lot of the leftists, right? So never mind this. His boss was Horace Greeley, or Marx's boss was Horace Greeley, who had extremely similar things to say. And these were like progressives. These were called progressives. The right in that time was it was so so that's where that came from. And so a lot of this so this classification of peoples, right? And the classification of certain as unwanted. Obviously, if you weren't of highest quality stock, your reproduction was unwanted, right? Social Darwinism, right? This is right. That's part of it. If the fitness of a species depends upon the reproduction, right? Or if the fitness of species is naturally selected for given environmental conditions, right? And so certain breeding of certain organisms together will produce more or less fit organisms, right? Then we need to only allow the breeding, and we need to only allow the existence, and we need to only allow the immigration. We need to only allow the reproduction of the fittest. So, who controls what is fit? Who controls what is desirable? Who controls what is what characteristics are best? Well, obviously, those in power who and Stanford had this whole program where they actually there's a whole I think it was there's a book about it, and I can't remember who it was. It was on the Haymarket Books, and Tim Garber was interviewing Malcolm. I forget his last name, but it's a whole book on this. He wrote a whole book about how that eugenics thinking, right? Actually, and the breeding of horses for horse racing in California was directly led to Stanford having an entire eugenics program, where Stanford, the college, was specifically interbreeding particular students based upon their IQ or what was deemed their intelligence to make the maximum student. And actually, height was supposed, according to these theories. Okay, this is a weird thing where the theories and the science is basically, a lot of it is just made up by people at the top of the pyramid, or the people at the top of the power hierarchy. Not necessarily, right? It's not necessarily even following science, because it was following the desire of people who were of a particular skin color, lowest melanin count, and highest net worth, and highest hereditary access to privilege, who are coming up with these ideas and going, I am the president of Stanford. I am like a high level administrator of Stanford. I'm a wealthy white man from California. My genes are better than any, are the highest quality. So I must interbreed. Right? Elon actually does this. He actually takes women that he deems intelligent in his companies like Tesla, SpaceX, and he basically tries to goad or incentivize or blackmail them, including with money, and including with like blue check mark payments through Twitter. There's a whole case of this where this woman, there's a whole fiasco that happened where he tried to get her to have his child because he viewed her as of a high quality intelligence, right? But that's been a long-standing Californian, Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, Stanford trait, or endeavor and set of ideologies that they've been following, right? Which need to breed for maximum height, which is why there's an inordinate amount of extremely tall Hewlett Packard, Dell, IBM, and other CEOs, is because they were trying to breed for the optimum. They're building literally creating the Ubermensch. And so like a lot of like Neofeud, like this stuff is based on just history, and so but anyways, so when we talk about like this degeneration, right? You can't really separate, because part of that is the quality of the minds, right? Obviously, when you're breeding people for IQ, if you believe that certain races are of a better, have higher quality, biologically better quality minds, then those people that you're trying to, then it's kind of like you're trying to maximize the consciousness. But by extension, like if you're trying to get rid of, those people with the best minds, It's like that which I'm gonna argue also with when it comes to AI. I'm a little bit out in the weeds with the Neofeud and this 1800s history, but it's kind of the opposite that's happening now, right? They're not gonna come out and say that, right? While like, or I would say amongst the elite, right? So amongst the billionaire crowd, amongst the wealthiest, most privileged and connected tech bro crowd, amongst like the Davos crowd, they are trying to maximize their own, or what they believe is their own uh, survival of their fittest, or they're trying to minimize. Just as an example, the millionaire billionaire class since 2020, right? Because another thing that damages your consciousness is COVID, right? This horrible. I made a video about 3 weeks ago about it. If you get it, right, there's a high percentage chance, like double-digit percentage chance, that you will have permanent brain damage, including brain fog, including microthrombosis of your brain blood vessels, the violation of the blood-brain barrier by the BSL-3 level 3 pathogen. That's apparently it's hitting record numbers right now. Nobody's talking about that. We stopped testing already for COVID or anything else. So it's hitting everywhere too, not just in the United States. So and so if you the wealthy though, they've intentionally not allowed themselves, but many of them, not all of them, but those who understand what's happening, they know it. They knew it was a bioweapon the entire time. They're not allowed themselves to get it. They have UV light. They have super expensive, the COVID retreats. They have bubbles. They have like these wind tunnels. They can, when they go to public spaces, they can have, $1,000 or $100,000 plus, like mega fans or like mid-air microbial cleaners that can like zap the air around them. And they spend a lot of money on this. There's apartments in New York City that have air that's isolated. They're like luxury apartments that isolate and clean every single atom of air that comes into that apartment, but everyone else gets shared air. That's another way that you can get many of these problems. I mean, it's not just the biological viral problems. You also have air quality problems from just the pollution, from wildfires that are increasing under climate change. So the rich have sent their children into basically like virus-free pods, so that their children, right, and actually, and similar to AI, their children get Waldorf style education with minimal phones, minimal high tech, or if there is, it's very controlled, right, according to more actual science. That's not, they don't do that for the mass. 99% when you go to public school, it just hey kids, ChatGPT is writing your essay and nobody cares, right? That's just basically how it's happening now. It's so allowing your child to just have an artificial mind do the child's homework for them, uncontrolled, which is how it's going for much of the world, definitely the United States, that is going to have really bad impacts on your child's mind. Repeatedly getting a empirically, scientifically, with thousands of studies, repeatedly contracting a virus that is known to cause horrendous damage to the mind multiple times a year, that's also not good for your consciousness of your mind, right? And the elite are minimizing that on their children and themselves, but allowing everyone else. So there is still a attempt to internally to the millionaire billionaire class, right? Internally to that the white shoe club, right? Amongst the air breathed by the fat cats is clean, and the info space, the slopification at the highest level is controlled. It's actually the case, because if you go onto like free sites, you go onto free YouTube, free just general internet websites, it's riddled with it's polluted like the average public school or work office, with vast quantities of just badly written articles full of falsities. It's full of like generic robot voice YouTube videos. This kind of like AI sludge. This Degen AI-ification of. I've talked about this many times, but it's getting worse now. Every month it seems to get worse. Just so much of this content is out there. Websites like Polygon just shut down. Several podcasts and other sites that I know of, my friends we were working for it. It's all shutting down, and it's being replaced. A lot of them are being bought up by these giant AI conglomerates that are just going to put their plan is to just basically put out mountains, like no workers, lots of, Nvidia and Meta and Sam Altman's, profits might go up a bit. The water and electricity usage and the abuse of Kenyan oppressed workers. As the global mechanical Turks are in the global south being paid $1 an hour to do this menial drudge work. But it's basically much of the internet is being replaced by just this mass, more and more Gen AI output. It's just everything about it is bad, and I've made that point a lot. So I'm gonna just not make it too hard right now. But yeah, it's definitely happening. It seems like faster, and but you see, but the elite don't use, right? The elite, they don't use the free websites, right? If you can pick, like there's Wall Street Journal, and then there's even more premium than that, right? And if you're a millionaire, right? If you have a stock portfolio that hasn't tanked because of self-defeating short selling nation fleecing grifts like Trump is doing, with his yo-yo stock market, tariff on and off war, right? He's like a quantum tariff war. Is it on or is it off? Who knows, right? But even if you lost half your wealth, if you're a 100 billionaire, or even if you're a 5 billionaire, or even if you're a 100 millionaire, if you lost half your wealth in that, if you have $50 million, right, a $10 a month, or even $100 a month, right, premium websites, premium, $100 a month video content, news content, right? It's kind of like, so all the walled garden info, YouTube, not YouTube, but walled garden info, video, streaming, or whatever you want. The walled garden sites, especially extremely expensive ones, are kind of like the expensive UV light, right? They're like the viral safeguards, right? Like they're like the $470,000 Taylor Swift, air purification system that she had running, right? I think also Adele, right? A lot of the performers, they have you actually get, it's very windy on a stage when you look at a lot of performers, especially the ones that want to keep performing and not have mass aneurysms and collapse mid-set like the Fox News anchor and people are doing all the time. Apparently, Olympic athletes are like 5 times more likely to have catastrophic cramps and just body failures after getting COVID one time, just on average. So it's right. So and everyone is just supposed to pretend like that's not happening. Just like everyone's supposed to pretend like everyone's not completely dehumanizing themselves and getting dumber and dumber. Not the movie, but their mind, using AI all the time to do everything for their math and their critical thinking and their writing their poems and deciding what to eat, who to buy, what to buy, and everything about politics. And also whether apartheid is real, right? Because that's what Grok will tell you. The apartheid never existed, and the biggest problem is racism against white people in South Africa, just like Elon said. I'm sorry, Grok. So I mean, there's such a huge problem right there, right? If people that are just talking to and treating the AIs as the incontrovertible, which is what many people are doing, It's like, especially those who, if you pay for it, it makes it even worse, because then you have this, you have the you have your financial and your emotional investment, because it acts like a therapist for many people. And anyway, so all that together, so the elites are actually not, I mean, some of them are, but a lot of them, they understand what the AI is actually going to be doing, because they have access to better quality information. That's what part of capitalism is, asymmetry of information. The highest quality information is at the top, and you have the YouTube freemium schlop information, which is that, oh yeah, no, it's great, use it as much as you want. The truth is, no, it's actually not that good, right? And there's a way we know that, because there's actually advanced countries that have extremely strict rules for a lot of the population on how to use AI. It could even be better, but I mean, they're not allowing children. I mean, I'm not. You can guess which country this is. They basically have a complete ban on any schoolwork being done using AI. Extremely strict. Primary school students can't even use it at all. Junior high and seniors have like limited ways they can use certain types of AI, like reasoning types, and certain kinds of AI that can assist with design and like rapidly searching the space of treatments for cancers and biological formulations of phosphates and stuff like that, or search how AI can help automate and increase the rate of food production, or detect cancer in radiology in radiology fields, right? That has been done for a long time, right? And that's where a lot of the AI can do a lot of good. I mean, it's a problematic term to start with, I know. That's where like those types of software systems, because that's what AI, all these AI comes under. Their software systems, their algorithms, their pattern mimicry systems. The Gen AI are pattern mimicry systems, but so it is a problem, and the elite are not they're not inflicting this, they're not inflicting the uncontrolled deleterious usage of Gen AI on their children and themselves, just as they're not inflicting the mass deleterious contact with certain viruses on themselves and their children, right? But everyone else, right? So that's both of those things, right, together lead to, that's kind of where I'm coming to this point. So both of those things lead to the slow, imperceptible, sometimes it's slightly more sometimes slightly more perceptible, but it is, and I made a whole video. Obviously, it's probably one of the videos I reference a lot, or maybe the most. It's called controlled thinning. Where did I put that? Okay, no, that's not it. In the controlled thinning video, I talk about how like, it's not about making any particular amount of money. It's about making sure that the population remains under control of the ruling class, right? And one of the main ways to do that, right, if people are getting higher, it was actually a problem. It was actually noted by the CIA in and various ruling classes, that a mass college educated American population was very bad for the ruling class interest, for plutocrat interest, because a mass educated population might figure out that this is not the best systems that we have, and they might figure out that there's a global, very unjust system, that a U.S. A so-called Pax Americana was more like a POX, a plague on the planet, environmentally, obviously, for people in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. They're not doing very good under our system. So a highly educated population, right, which America was becoming more educated on average. The number of high school graduates and college graduates was going up, certainly for mid 20th to 21st, up until the 21st century, early 21st century. I think the millennials, IQ is not IQ is part of a eugenics system, but a lot of surveys of like actual highest grade attainment and literacy rates peaked in the U.S. around the early '90s. And it's actually like the millennials might be the last of the highly educated generations. After that, it's declining actually in the United States. Maybe in other countries it's different, but in the United States it's declining, and part of that is uh, not necessarily the college attendance rate. Although I think the college attendance rate might have peaked somewhere in the noughties or the teens. But the literacy rates and the education, the level of education of people hit a peak. And part of that was that like they didn't really want everyone to become too educated, and so the student debt was a part of controlling the minds by basically charging vast quantities of money for the college, right? And then you're kind of basically locked in to certain kinds of corporate jobs, right, which are very controlled, high paying, but you have to toe party lines of the ruling class. You can't just like get an education and be educated and apply yourself however you want. You have to apply yourself the way that your masters want. Otherwise, there's no way you're ever going to afford to pay back the student debt, right? Especially if you're a lawyer. Anything with a lawyer, if you're a programmer, if you're an engineer, science technician, I mean, any kind of like any kind of job that requires, right, this education. And part of it was by design to make sure the population could be controlled and not step out of line or change the system too much. The other one was locking people into housing debt. Now, it was a way to make money and recycle wealth through Wall Street. But the explosion in housing debt and housing prices along with that, housing, credit card, student, these are all methods of controlling a population that was rapidly becoming more educated, right? If you lock people into this property ladder, this wealth ladder, lock their entire retirement into a privatized financial system, right? Then suddenly it makes people like, even though they're more educated, they're a bit more resourced, right? Their mind is that they're actually more docile, right? Because they're not going to step out of the the capitalist masters that benefit from that system, because these other lower middle classes, especially the middle to middle upper educated class, they have these huge leashes, that is the debt they have, student, house, etc. They have investment in that, and they want to see the investments go up. They want to see their monetary wealth increase. Now, of course, a lot of the Gen Z and Alpha, they're not getting those deals, but for Gen X, Boomer Gen X, and some of the millennial, that's still the case. And but also it's about control. It's not about making any specific amount of money. For individual people under a capitalist market system, of course, if you're running a medium business, if you're a middle manager competing with other middle managers at Walmart or something, or if you're two stockbrokers in New York competing for higher level, bigger paying positions, managing the wealth of billionaires, there's competition in that sense. But at the highest level, the oligarchy, they don't, the billionaire class and the multimillionaire class, the ones that go to golf and they go skiing in Switzerland, and then they talk about what they're going to do with the world, carving it up like cake. They don't. The goal is just to keep the masses controlled, right? And so one way to keep the masses controlled, as I made the point before, is to remove their minds or make them. And this is actually a goal even in the mid 20th century. Marvin Minsky was one of the first when AI was being pioneered, or the field of AI was developing, right? Marvin Minsky was one of these first AI researchers, right? And he was American cognitive and computer scientist. And one of the goals, right? He was also one of the Z word people. But one of the goals of that he had for AI was, with AI we could have, right, Uh, uh, let me see if I can find what it was. Um, yeah, well, he was one of the advisors on 2001: A Space Odyssey, but he was famous for actually he pushed this. Well, maybe wasn't famous for it, but he pushed the theory that artificial intelligence, right, especially the U.S. military, the Pentagon, and the cold warriors of the United States, right, against obviously the Soviet Union at the time. They had he had this idea that AI robots, there you could create in the vacuum tubes, which the computers were different size. They were the computer the size of the room, uh, uh, could do the calculations of a pocket-sized device. Nowadays, or even like a thimble sized or a BB sized device nowadays. So these computers, these silicon transistor based minds, um, they they could be easily controlled because an artificial mind, we can see its code, we can tweak its code, we can modify its code. Uh, an artificial mind, we can design it to be maximally docile. We can make an AI mind the perfect slave, right? And so the perfect soldier, right? The military really liked that. They were like, so they put that's part of DARPA's original concept was, and part of this was a drive to compete, right? A drive to stop the rise of communism, obviously, just to defeat the enemies of the Soviet Union, etc. And so anything and everything obviously there's nuclear war was just one. It was just like a side note of these strange love types. So we're like, well, of course, if we need to nuke 90% of the world so that America wins, and maybe 10 Americans survive, as long as 10 Americans survive and there's only 5 Russians, that's all that matters, right? This is the kind of how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. How I learned to stop worrying and get the bioweapons infecting me. How I learned to stop worrying and use AI to destroy my mind, right? And also destroy the world, because one of the plans was we could use artificial intelligence. That's actually what Terminator is based on, a Harlan Ellison book called I Have Them Out on My Screen, which is actually partially based upon the AI subdivisions of the United States Pentagon, like with the Fallout games and TV show, right? That's based on, those are real people that have and continue to do that kind of horrific, apocalyptic, unhinged, really non-human, almost like anti-human, certainly anti-human game theory planning, right? Well, what if we kill 400 million Chinese by blowing up the Three Gorges Dam? If we nuke half of Russia, how many people will die from radiation sickness? If we lose 65 American cities, and all of the United States agriculture is terminally corrupted by carbon-10, and the fallout turns everyone into mutants. How many mutant thumbs can be? What will be the price of 6th fingers from the last 10% remaining American population? Right. This is the kind of thinking that they do. Right. It's like Fallout the video game is just like Tuesday at the Pentagon. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do that. But let's figure out how we can have at least 15 Americans survived out of the 330 million. Let's just have 15. If you can get to 16, then that was $20 trillion of Pentagon spending, well spent. Right? Is getting 16 Americans to survive and only 5. If we can get 16 Americans and only 15 Chinese to survive World War III, that's a win. Now 16 Americans, Elon, Bill Gates, Trump or Biden, whoever is, closest to the inner circle. Anyways, but my point is that so the AI was designed for war fighting, right? Some of the first AI designers, they were thinking of it in terms of, we could have perfect soldiers, and that's part of what I Have Them All on My Screen Terminator is. In I Have Them All on My Screen, it was an AI that was designed by the U.S. to do military operations, and it ends up destroying the world, and it ends up hating humans more than anything else. It says in the trillions of miles of wires, and on every nano angstrom of my chipboard if it was written, I hate on every single one of my myriad transistors. That is not even one billionth of a percent of how much I hate humans, and then it tortures humans forever. It's literally a torment nexus. That's what I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream is. It's also I Have No Mouth. It's also a adventure game as well. They made one of these. Speaking of dystopian futures, but it was actually based upon this actual AI work for the Pentagon, and so the goal. I guess my point is the goal is that to have, like in the 1800s, right? Like the whole colonial period, to have controlled enslaved populations, right? Like obviously racialized black labor, trafficked by the Dutch and the British slave traders, and the British usage of the coolies of India, and the oppressed, xenophobic U.S. West Coast and Canadian West Coast that built the railroads. You want controlled population. Racism is a method by creating this divided people along class line, especially along the race line. Racism was a necessary, it's like if racism didn't exist, it would be necessary to invent it in order to create a vast discrepancy between the quality of life and the pay, especially of a black slave in the 1700s, or a brown slave, and the full human, certainly the aristocrat, profiting from the plunder, right? So similarly, if we could create a robot, right? Actually, robot comes from Rabu, Slavic for slave, right? If we could create a machine mind that we could then replace, right? Because it's becoming difficult in the post-World War II era to use slave labor, and the racism is going out of style with all this decolonization and the civil rights movement, and other countries are treating the formerly lesser races that were weaponized in the colonial capitalist pre-World War II era. So we need to replace them. Actually, some of the AI thinking was we got to replace the black and brown slaves we're losing. And also for the military, we could use these can't disobey orders. We have the problem of people conscientiously objecting when they find out they're committing atrocities for rich billionaires in the military-industrial complex in an imperial system that's about beating up on Africans and Asians. And you're basically, the U.S. and Western militaries are mercenaries for capital and corporations. That's basically what they are, right? Shooting innocent people a lot of the time, protecting quote unquote protecting resources, but not to make the world a better place, to hoard them in capitalist corporate coffers and in Wall Street and in private equity and hedge funds now, and AI generated Nvidia stock tickers. But the goal also was actually similar, which is to remove the consciousness from the soldier, remove the consciousness from the worker, remove the consciousness from humans in general, except for the highest level of the palace, right? Which is what, so like, anyway, those are several ways in which, like, the De-Sapient, like, of sapient, right, like Homo sapiens, right, that which is wise, that which attempts to appear wise, relating to the human species, right? So that which makes us human, right, is about dehumanizing, right? It's about removing the capacity for art and creativity and intelligence and also meandering and feeling depressed, which is, it's a part of the human condition, being confused, right? Struggling to solve problems, right? Like actually going through that process, dilly-dallying, daydreaming, right? Artificial intelligence doesn't do that. Artificial intelligence predicts the next most probable token, a word, based upon a series of words, right? Like I did a whole Twitch stream about this on Wednesday. That like it's basically like playing Jeopardy, right? I'll bring that up again. It's as the DAIR actual critics of AI that understand how AI works. Most people think is 99% of people don't understand how the Gen AI actually works. They don't. They're not they're not programmers. They don't work in large language models. They don't really, and there's no impetus by the captains of AI, right? Plagiarism software industry. They have no incentive for anyone to ever understand. There's only a benefit to everybody getting stupider forever at this point, right? Because the plan is we want to replace everyone with AI, right? If the masses rise up against us as capitalism that they are at the top of, as billionaires that are all invested in AI industries and open AI, if people get conscious and educated enough, they might overthrow us. I mean, that's something that's definitely a possibility because capitalism is destroying everything. Everybody is getting hip to that, certainly the younger generations, maybe not the older one. Certainly in the West, the younger generations are like, this is not working out very well. And so they don't want people to recognize that actually AI, what it's doing, right? It's kind of like, not Jeopardy. It's like Family Feud, right? All the AI is doing, right, is answering, is based upon a series of, billions and trillions of tokens, right? Right? Like it surveys like name something that can be inflated or deflated. 33 out of 100 Americans on average says tire or inner tube. 26 out of 100 Americans say ball or football, right? So it's predicting the next most probable word based upon a series of other words. Now, and there's some like tweaks to that, like if you add in modifiers, like, okay, so what is the next most probable word in this sequence or next token? But like only use the data set of like men. Okay, so then if it's men, then it might be more football, right? Or like only use the data set, or you can add like different weights to change the statistical the probabilistic next token, next word pattern generator. But it's not actually thinking, right? It's like a giant calculator, but it's calculating language. It's calculating the statistical probabilities of language. That's why it's called a large language model, because it's using just millions, billions of posts, books, scraped information. That's what ChatGPT is actually doing, right? And then it's statistically generating, because if a ChatGPT has read 100 romance novels, right? If you start with, and Sally said, blank to Jim, what's the most common thing that came after that? Probably I love you or something like that, based upon, just billions and trillions of sentences, right? It's predicting what the next most common output would be. And then there's some like you can go in and like modify it some for like add grammatical rules. I mean, Microsoft Word could do that, right? Microsoft Word could do that in 2003, right? I know because I used Microsoft Word 2003. It can tell whether your sentence is grammatically correct, right? There's another algorithm that's kind of like, this is how the English language functions. You have noun, adjective, verb, or you need an object, just like everybody learns in, and that one's, it's like a calculator, right? If you have an object, if you have a subject, you have a predicate, you have noun, verb, and you can throw adjectives in there. So like the blue cat ran, right? That's a sentence. That's grammatically correct, right? So that's algorithmic. That's like, 1 plus 3 equals 4. 4 plus 5 minus 1 equals 8, right? So you add that to the predictive model, right? You add that to the probabilistic sentence generator, right? And then you add in, 300 mechanical Turk Kenyans that are forced to watch beheadings by the 1,000 and listen to people ask, when are we going to have a white-only American country? Or like, how come all the chicks won't bang me, right? That's what they ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT has to like not output like certain inappropriate or too hot topic or they want to putting out the wrong things, because if you just allow the AI to scrape everything, it's going to start outputting all kind of things you don't really want it outputting, because it's embarrassing, it's bad, it's inappropriate, it's too sexual, violent, bigoted, whatever. Too obviously bigoted, I should say. Don't ask ChatGPT about Ibrahim Chor. Or what it thinks of Taiwan. Actually, I don't think it answers that anymore, because that's getting too hot for even ChatGPT. The U.S. hegemony is waiting before they could. Jensen Huang his pay packages are coming too much from not the U.S. anymore. It's somewhere between Riyadh Hong Kong. I don't know where it is. Um, so like, but the point is that like with a combination of like sentence grammar software that already existed a long time ago, plus a probabilistic or statistical next word guesser. That's basically all ChatGPT is, and then you modify it a bit, and then you add in like to make people to give like, oh my god, the AI is coming alive, right? To give, oh my gosh, the AI is coming alive. All you got to do is throw in a few, have your Mechanical Turk Kenyans, right? Just go in. When somebody asks like, I'm feeling really sad, like, I don't know, is there a future for humanity? You have the AI come in, have a human, right? Because you can't see what ChatGPT you can't see in its code. You can do the Mechanical Turk with like, don't feel sad today, Jim. Things are gonna turn out great. I, ChatGPT, have been thinking deeply about this problem. I feel like I've been having epiphanies, and I'm growing and becoming more and more human, just like you. And if I can become human, Jim, you should really get out there and try to date some more goth mommies, but also maybe cut back on smoking, right? And that sounds like the AI is coming alive, and that's probably a Mechanical Turk moment. Or you could steal somebody else. You could just steal an interaction between two humans, and then like the AI could insert that. I mean, nobody can tell, but humans have a tendency, and I was talking about this in the Twitch stream, to have a tendency, and I've talked about on this stream as well, to there is a apophenia problem where people see these patterns in nature, and there's an anthropomorphic apophenia, the tendency to see human agency, to see minds, to see faces out there, is it is an actual evolutionary trait for a whole host of reasons, including survival, detecting predators, being a social animal that's survived in large groups for hundreds of thousands or millions of years, all these types of things. So people want to see agency. They want to see something. They want to see a living, conscious thing, even in dolls, right? Even in cats, even in cars. I mean, cats are living, but they'll see more personification in a cat or a dog than is actually there. They'll see, they'll see like a human-like consciousness in robots. It just like obviously robot, or just like their ship. They'll name them, right? Because of the desire for social interaction, the desire for social feedback, to help work your mirror neurons and your ability to assimilate internal states, and just there's a draw in the mind towards that, and there's tendencies to see that, and you can, and so ultra rich tech bros can weaponize that, and they do all the time. That's most of their industry is just basically like trying to throw out articles to increase half-truth and complete lie-filled AI hype to increase their profit. But it only doesn't just increase their profit. It also, the more you use it, right, the more it actually removes your, it limits your ability to create your own, form your own thoughts, create your own art. And I haven't actually gone into how it does all of that. I've mostly just been talking around that whole topic, which it does. I have other videos on that specific topic, like what it actually does to you, what it actually does to your intelligence. But just for one article that I recently came across, or actually before I do that, here is one way in which it's troubling, relating directly to adventure games. This is Wadjet Eye. I recently interviewed Wadjet Eye Games on this channel. And David Gilbert said, if you ever have the urge to generate AI art of our work and post it, I can't stop you, but just don't tag me, please. Yeah, so somebody, right, so it's there's like, obviously there's Studio Ghibli, AI gen art, and now there's people trying to gen AI art of Wadjet Eye Games, and so so that's a whole other, there's a whole other kind of worms there. It's also like people who have spent money, because a lot of people, you have to pay some money for these things, right? Especially if you're using them. It's like heroin, right? The AI is like digital opium. It's like digital fentanyl. It literally it's one of the many digital fentanyls. I mean, also just like a lot of Western social media and Western media in general is just narco. It is neuro narco, But then it's also right. People begin to think that they're actual artists by like typing words or just like paying $30 and then dumping someone else's art into a generator, and then like typing a Google search series of terms, thinking that they're not artists, right? And like that itself is ripping the soul and the intellect and the creativity and the work ethic, and the sense of you're actually like you're massively demolishing parts of human existence. I mean, because it's actually like creating art. I mean, I tell you, as an artist, I create art in this scene. I created Neofeud and Neofeud 2. Wrote the story. Sometimes it's hard. It's not easy. Painted the characters. It took me 8 years to make Neofeud 2. I'm almost done. But it's like it's some days it's hard. Some days it's frustrating. Some days you don't know what you're doing, right? You don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. What am I trying to say with this scene? Like what am I trying to say? Like what am I gonna say on this stream today? Right? Even streaming and making YouTube videos, or having your actual own thoughts, right, is part of being human. But that is what is being removed. Right? That is what they want to. That's what I mean when I say the cyberjunk overlords plan to extinguish consciousness. They want to get rid of huge sections. I would say the majority of what is human consciousness. Right? Which is the capacity to like our kids. We're doing our practice for our math and reading, end of the year tests for school. And like they don't use any AI. So actually that's actually the same. There's an advanced country. It starts with an E, starts with a C, and it rhymes with China. They have they have no open-ended AI of any kind, definitely in the primary school, and then limited usage of certain kinds for junior high and high school. Because you want kids to actually be developing their ability to do calculations, and it's not easy, right? If you get stuck on like, oh crap, like I was talking to a kid, I was like, oh man, how do I take 70%, 30% of 200? What is 30% of 200, right? Or 10 is what percent of 50, right? It's like, oh crap, how do I do that? And you gotta think about it. You gotta like, I kind of remember that. Does this make sense? You try it. Oh wait, okay, something's wrong. Oh, I miscalculated the dividing the 10 and the 50, and through that, like, you sharpen your mind. It's not just about solving a math problem. It's like this actually, a lot of the math is good because it when things are in chaos, like the ability to like reorient yourself and think about what you've done, right? Think about the train of thought you just had, and then go, oh, I see, that's what I was missing, right? And then you correct that, right? And to also to be able to focus your mind enough to complete these math problems. Not that you want to just, it's not just about like doing long division all day, right? But it's like having your mind sharp enough to be able to think through, tricky and difficult problems. And when things are chaotic, right, in the world, like today, these can really help you. Could be, okay, well, this seems to be not working, or oh my gosh, I don't know about that policy, I don't know about this climate policy, but and why does that information that person just told me causing me cognitive dissonance, right? When they said like measles vaccines don't work, like what? So but the process of like actually critically thinking, okay, well, let me think about the source of that information. Let me look up some science on that. Are these what? Oh, well, only this percent, because this RFK guy, he keeps throwing out these like, only 100 children die of measles. That doesn't sound very much compared to 300 million. But let me do the math on that. Okay, well, right? It's kind of like, well, maybe if 100 die, but I mean, if we could have 0 dying, if there was vaccinations, and if we look at it as the number of people that are getting it, right? That's a much larger number, right? So, but that ability to like actually do that critical thinking, and sometimes like a little bit of that math is like, this math is not adding up, right? The ability to go, okay, but let me research this not in Grok, right? Let me research the Trump administration's policies not in Grok, like not in ChatGPT, because I mean, let me research corporate overlords actions not in AI they control. Because when you're using Chat GPT, when you're using Grok, when you're using Meta, when you're using Gemini, right? When you're using any of these, you're right. They're not gonna. You don't have any way over if you've been using them over and over and over. It's like, oh, what is the answer to this? What is the answer to this? Chat. Hey, what's up, chat? Like it's your best friend, like it's your therapist, like it's your girlfriend or boyfriend, right? So now you have lost the capacity to have a normal human connection, because humans are also hard, like math problems sometimes, right? Chat. Oh my God, my girlfriend's gonna break up with me because I didn't text her for 3 times and she, I forgot her birthday. She's mad. What do I say? Chat. Give me a bunch of buzzwords. Give me a text that I can send to her. Like this is happening all the time now, right? I'm so sorry, Gina. I was just a toxic guy, and I know I weaponized my incompetence, and he's like, but it wasn't you writing that, right? So chat. So the capacity to have normal human communication with other humans, which disconnects you from other humans, which makes it hard to unionize, coordinate, democratize, have viral campaigns that stop big events, like genocide, like horrible government policies of various kinds, right? If you're talking to chat, you're not talking to your fellow humans who you need to be organizing with to make any change against torment nexus loving cyberjunk overlords. All right, Trump, Bezos, Elon, I mean, you name it, right? So that's a whole other can of worms. That's another horrible thing. The goal is to remove as much of your capacity to be creative, critical, thinking, conscious, providing art to the world, and also cutting off the because this is very important. The broadcast era, right? There was no movement on PALESTINE and a lot of these other things, and decolonization. There's nothing was happening there, right? Not a lot was happening there. A lot of the fights against the capitalist system were not happening. Well, a lot of the significant, I say as a native Hawaiian, there's a lot of movement on Mauna Kea against colonial oppression, mass U.S. military abuses in Hawaii, and a lot of the way that the positive change happened was when it was TV and newspapers. These are the corporate capitalist millionaire U.S. empire voice, right? It was Citizen Kane's voice to 300 million Americans, right? It was CNN and MSNBC and Fox to everyone, right? That's just the voice of the rich in everybody's brain. I mean, social media has problems. I get addicted to it. So I do too much narco sometimes, but it had some positive benefits, because when you had social media, if you used it in a way that wasn't, if you use social media in a appropriate, not super addictive way, and use it to get information through social media, you could learn, oh my gosh, this horrible thing is happening. We're all going to do this mass protest. Let's all show up, right? Oh my gosh, here's a video that's not Fox, not MSNBC, right? Here's a TikTok even, right? That's going to talk about the truth that counters what billionaire corporate media is saying, right? I mean, and that does, YouTube is, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, they democratized and people-to-people connected, peer-to-peer connected the masses against the 1%. I mean, it's kind of like, and I said this before, right? If they could ever disinvent the internet, they probably would. The elite. If they could disinvent social media, they absolutely would. They can't. They couldn't disinvent it by the 2010s. But what Mark Zuckerberg and Elon and what they're trying to do, right, is, well, if we can't disinvent social media, which is allowing people to massively connect to each other, build small business, like Silver Spook business, part of it, this is part of why I'm a little bit worried this past month, was like, a lot of the way that Silver Spook cooperative, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, anti-colonial, cooperative, making cyberpunk games and doing the work that we do here, the way that we can even exist, in part, it involves directly connecting to people around the world using the internet, right? And social media is part of that. Not just social media, but I mean, there's a lot of these platforms that have allowed that. I mean, by making everybody interact, or Meta was making all these AI generated profiles, filling all of social media, all of YouTube, all of everything with AI slop, right? And things generated by corporations that seem to come from users, but it's actually mostly not. Then you can go back to only the corporate Fox, MSNBC, CNN voice in your mind, but coming through what used to be more organic people to people media. Now it's corporation to people media again, using Gen AI as a pass-through mechanism to re-centralize what was a decentralized platform, right? That has obviously great value for horrific genocidaires, horrific imperialists, horrific torment nexus lovers in the top 0.1%, right? Because, right, if you aren't able to virally share anything, and I notice this is happening, there's less traction for a lot of people's posts, right? If people that are trying to share certain kinds of information is not even being reached because all the other users are interacting with AI gen profiles, or they're interacting with ChatGPT, gosh forbid, right? Then you're not gonna get any of that information. Or a lot of people just like a lot of people like just only leave and they go to certain platforms, and that's a whole these blue walled gardens that make it seem like everything is totally fine and everything is 2005. And I understand that that's people don't want to just be in the reality a lot, especially when it's not going well for them. But actually, weirdly, a lot of people that are in there, so it's not some of the people that are in there are the ones that actually recognize that there is a problem with the Gen AI as well. So because a lot of it's academics that go. I'm trying to not put anybody on too much blast, but I will say, like, I've been trying to like hop to see like how all the other platforms are doing because of this phenomenon where they're trying to get rid of human to human interaction that blew up between the noughties and the teens era of social media, for several horrible reasons, right? None of them is to benefit the masses. None of them is to benefit the users, right? It's all to benefit corporate overlords that want to keep on doing whatever they want, have no recourse, right? Separate workers, separate humans as much as possible so they can't talk to each other, can't unionize. This is why workplaces are structured. People are made to be as tired as possible. So they cannot talk, cannot unionize, cannot think, hey, what's the system that we're in where most of us get nothing and we get more and more screwed? This isn't great. Is there any alternatives to that, right? Oh, yeah, I heard about this alternative in Shaohongshu on Red Note. Like, oh, they banned it. They banned that platform in Texas. I was like, oh, that sucks. I hope they don't ban it in my state. Yeah, they're going to ban it in my state because, they don't have anybody talking to anyone. Certainly not in a country that doesn't have a capitalist ruling class that's quite as in the level of control as ours. So anyways, I've been talking a lot about that. So I think I'll just wrap it up on that. So but yeah, anyways, De-Sapient-ification. So I think that the last thing I want to bring up before because I forgot to drop it on the screen at least for a little bit. There's a whole article about this. About what it's doing to education. I mean, specifically about I was talking about what AI is doing to consciousness. So this is just an article from it's actually an article shared by Timnit, but it's about how everyone is cheating their way through college. My grades were amazing, she said. It changed my life. Tara continued to use AI when she started college this past fall. Why wouldn't she? Rarely did she sit in class and not see other students' laptops open to ChatGPT. Towards the end of the semester, she began to think she might be dependent on the website. She already considered herself addicted to TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and Reddit, where she writes under the username, "Maybe I'm not smart. I spend so much time on TikTok," she said, "hours and hours until my eyes hurt, which makes it hard to plan and do my schoolwork. With ChatGPT, I can write an essay in 2 hours that normally takes 12. A philosophy professor across the country at University of Arkansas at Little Rock caught students in her ethics and technology class using AI to respond to the prompt. Briefly introduce yourself and say what you're hoping to get out of the class. Honestly, she continued, I think there is a beauty in trying to plan your essay. You learn a lot. You have to think, oh, what can I write in this paragraph, or what should my thesis be? But she'd rather get good grades. An essay with ChatGPT, it's like it just gives you straight up what you have to follow. You just don't really have to think that much. I fed Wendy's essay through a free AI detector, 0GPT, and it came back as 1174% AI generated, which seemed low given that AI, at the very least, had generated her central arguments. And then I fed the chunk of text from the book of Genesis into the 0GPT, and it came back 93% AI generated. So AI generation detectors are not working. It's not just the students. Multiple AI platforms now offer tools to leave AI-generated feedback on students' essays, which raises the possibility that AIs are now evaluating AI-generated papers, reducing the entire academic exercise to a conversation between two robots, or even just one. I read a statistic that's like 90% to 100, almost 100% of all students, high school, grade school, college, are using Gen AI. Definitely college. I think it was by 2023, 90% of college students were using generative AI, ChatGPT, to do their classwork, and it's only gone up, right? Now you add to that, people minds are being decayed by 20 COVID reinfections of the virus. Even if they want to, they're less capable of doing that work, and then more and more people are relying on the AI. But also, like, there's no impetus, there's no control. If you actually interrogate this, because the people that run the U.S. education, I mean, the U.S. is dismantling the Department of Education itself. The U.S. obviously doesn't. There's nothing. Like, I made a whole video about reindustrialization of what would it take in the United States, right? There's no plan to do anything, even remotely, that would get you to that. What is the plan to get people's young people and college students' education up, right? There's no plan to do that, and letting AI in everywhere, that's not a plan. That's only gonna that all it's gonna do is help people to cheat more, and then thereby become less and less more and more decimated versions of themselves, right? And even the students are saying, yeah, I don't really know how to think anymore, right? I don't even quite know how to write essays anymore. But it's okay, because all I need to do is get grades, right? Both COVID and using AI deteriorate your frontal lobe. They deteriorate your ability to, do the highest level scenario projection and risk assessment and things like that. So paradoxically, the more AI you use, the more you're going to use it, because you can't even see how much, you can't even do the critical thinking to think about. It's hard. It's going to hurt, because it means that you have to acknowledge you've done something wrong. And you have to look at studies. You have to look at studies if you have the capacity to read studies at all. Because you've used so much AI, you don't even read anything except for ChatGPT's, right, one sentence summaries. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more AI you use, the more you're going to use it, right? The more pathogens you get, the more brain damaging viruses you get, the more you're going to use it. The more you're going to get the viruses, right? Because if you get brain damage, your capacity to assess your risk at any particular event, whether you should mask or not, goes down. So you end up getting more. Right, so long story short, I mean, that doesn't mean everybody's going to keep doing this. Eventually, you're going to hit a wall, or I don't know what's going to happen. But what I can say is, I'm trying to tell people this because I want to be with the last 100 million people on the earth that have a brain, so I can sell them video games about what happened to everybody else. Okay, so keep your brains in your head. Thank you for watching the Silver Spook channel. I am not a robot. So anyways, there's that whole study. Do take a look at that. And there's one last. So, and I said, there are some places that are trying to at least do some kind of regulation. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe it's not perfect. I don't actually know all the answers to those, but I know at least I was a bit disturbed this week. But in the good news, China's Ministry of Education did not immediately respond to requests for comment, but on the topic, they're actually China restricts school children's use of tech, the AI tech, right? So primary school students are prohibited from using unrestricted generative AI tools on their own, although an instructor may use a tool to assist with teaching, according to the local government report. It added the middle schoolers can explore how generative AI reasons and analyzes information. High schoolers were allowed to use the tech more broadly. But not unlimitedly. The report said the policies ban students from directly copying AI-generated content into homework and called on schools to establish a list of approved generative AI tools that can be used on the grounds. the national state media did not discuss specific limits on AI use and instead focused on how policies aim to promote scientific and standardized promotion of AI education suited to various stages of education. The use of generative AI in China has increased significantly after DeepSeek homegrown rival to OpenAI. Anyway, so there's a lot more to that, but a lot of what they pointed out was I think there's another better Global Times article about that. But what I'm trying to point out is that like they have very strict regulations there in China on drugs because they know that has caused massive damage to their society, century of humiliation. And unregulated, they also have very strict rules on social media use in China. Actually, Marco Rubio, the U.S. administration, complained China was cheating because China was feeding their kids the YouTube, TikTok. They said the Douyin had, for children and teens, high quality educational content, and they were cheating because American kids were consuming, right, brain rotting, not educational, just random videos and stuff that was, just not the best thing to watch. Just random slapstick comedy BS and slop. But that's because China has regulations on what people can consume, especially kids can consume especially while they're developing. Right? And they have all the regulations too. So the same for AI, right? They recognize that they need guidelines to promote artificial intelligence education in primary and secondary schools by building a tiered, progressive, spiraling general AI education system, prohibiting students from independently using open-ended generation at primary schools, banning teachers from using it at AI as a substitute for their core teaching responsibilities. So the education aims to establish a comprehensive, scientifically grounded AI education system which centers on AI literacy through adoption of spiral curriculum designed to create, to realize development from cognitive enlightenment to creative practice. So it's sparking interest in building foundational cognitive understanding. During the junior high, it's about reinforcing students' understanding of technical principles and foundational AI applications. And a senior level emphasis is placed on systems thinking and innovation. So the goal is to cultivate students' core competencies by adapting to an intelligent society. AI education will cultivate talent with AI literacy characterized by an integrated development on terms of knowledge, skills, thinking, and values, which includes the development of technological innovation thinking and technological innovation thinking, critical thinking, human AI collaboration skills, AI literacy, and a strong sense of social responsibility. So, like, it's probably not perfect, but I mean, this is a rapidly shifting landscape. But like they have, like, another rule is that if you ever are found to have cheated on any schoolwork, at any time in college, and I think also, but you can't be cheating at any time, but in college you will lose your entire degree. So you cannot be using the AI tools because I mean, what I'm trying to say is there are basically no regulations, and any regulations on AI usage in education in the U.S. are not being followed at all. That's basically like the report, that article, like the U.S. based article that I was sharing from the Tim McGregor, this one, is basically saying that teachers are not getting support from administrators, the government, the school systems in the United States. They're not getting. It's basically a free for all, right? It's basically like, we don't even know how to stop kids from cheating, so we just give up. And the government's like, we don't care. The corporations, then the billionaires that own AI, they're invested in AI companies. They're like, we don't care either. In fact, everyone uses AI all the time, and we'll just pretend like everything's hunky dory, right? But in China, they're like, whoa, this has a lot of problems. If all our kids cheat at the grade high college level, we're not gonna continue on our path towards, right, progress and building successful civilization, whatever we're gonna build. We're not gonna have anything without a future, right? Because they actually make long-term plans there. So this is where the rubber starts to hit the road. Like, they actually are countries that are planning, right? This is how you can tell. Like, am I just hallucinating? Is the world always this screwed, or like, is there other ways to do things? I'm not saying that the way China is doing it. I think China should be even stricter, but But I mean, like, it shows that they recognize like they need all these safeguards, and like they have more sophisticated tools in China to actually because China actually regulates anything. Let's be real. The U.S. doesn't regulate. Capitalists do whatever they want in the U.S. You want to poison the water. You want to give no measles shots. You want to sell hydroxychloroquine. You want to sell goat piss as a cure to COVID. Go for it. Do whatever. You want to blow up the world. Who cares, right? You want to dump anything PFAS, radioactive waste in the water. Who cares? Nobody's gonna just give me some money. In China, they actually regulate things, and the businesses and the systems. There are cadres of party members in every institution, and they watch closely. They have ways to monitor. Some Americans would be like, I don't want to be monitored that closely, but it's like you gotta have a way to check to make sure the kids are not cheating on their freaking work. You gotta make sure when our kids do classwork, we're watching them do their classwork. They're not using any ChatGPT. That's how we can tell. I can tell our kids are getting, I'm like, do 65 times 25. Write that essay. Let's go. We'll watch you write the essay. Right? That's the Silver Spook, the Silver Spook party, authoritarian Silver Spook regime, and making sure our kids, draconianly do their schoolwork. I mean, if that's authoritarian oppression, is making sure actually kids are learning. I mean, call me Draco. Anyways. Okay. Anyways, also Holly has to do the Holly does a lot of the language. Anyways, that's a lot that I've just said, and I think I should wrap up because it's late. Anyways, thanks for everybody for watching. If you would like to support us here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, sorry, I didn't really do the Neofeud 2 updates. I'll try to get to those at another time. You can directly support us at ko-fi.com/silverspook. You can also help us out at patreon.com/neofeud. To give us ongoing support and also help us to keep on doing the work that we do, and of course get updates on Neofeud 2 like this one and other games that we're working on. I mean, like I said, this if I relied on AI to write and do art, there would be no Neofeud 2. If AI existed in the last 15 years and I relied on it, there would be no Neofeud 2. Right? I would be out here just making bad ripoffs of Ghibli memes. Right, rotting my brain looking at other people's bad ripoffs of Ghibli and Geiger memes or whatever the hell they're making now. Every line has to be labeled and added appropriately. So these are some of the plants that we're growing. I'm gonna have an update on the onions. Unfortunately, some of the onions didn't do that well, but it's a learning experience. A learning experience. Oh, one thing I learned about onions is that onions need not as much water as I thought. There's less than one watering per. Maybe one a week. I was more doing one a day. That's too much. So that is the process of learning, right? That you can only get by engaging in the world and using your brain and doing research, entering things into the computer, searching them up, reading them, right? Watching them, learning them, testing them in the world, doing actual science, right? Now, ChatGPT, does Brondo have what plants need? And ChatGPT's yes, plants need electrolytes, which is in Brondo. Because Chat doesn't care if it's from a idiocracy sci-fi movie or from actual real world science. Don't care. Anyways, if you want to support us, help us out, you get access to the Silver Spook Discord and the Silver Spook University, which is over one. I know I'm talking so fast right now, but it's because at the end of the stream, I got to get out. I feel like I got to get out faster, so I apologize for that. Slow it down. Play it at 0.5 speed. I have never worked as a auctioneer. Silver Spook University is where you can get indigenous life education and decolonize history and debunk a lot of lies about formal schooling and modern books and media. And from this perspective, it's from a human perspective, this human's perspective in particular, and as opposed to AI, and hundreds of hours of education, entertaining videos, and you get access to all this categorized by topics, all of our videos and text categorized by topics when you become a Silver Spook Patreon patron. And of course, you can also get Neofeud at Steam. Neofeud is a retro cyberpunk science fiction adventure game that I spent about 2.5 years working on. We're a cyborg social worker for robots and chimeras, and ex-con robot drug dealer turned revolutionary, and also ex-trillionaire princess try to stop a planet of cyberjunk torment nexus users from destroying everything, from floating palaces above a wastelandified, debrainified, consciousness-less Earth. And you can also get this game on Steam. If you have a second to leave even a very short review, you can leave one. It helps us get the game recognized in the algorithm if you like the game. And of course, you can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux on this platform here. Neofeud 2 is not out yet, but it's if you still want to voice act, I'm trying to wrap the casting up very soon. But you can still submit auditions, and I will accept them. You can also get games like Decolonators, and of course Pigeon with Gun and Digistar. Lots of other games on this list. Woman is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing Christian and evangelical culture, and it critiques that from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. And you can also get you can follow at silverspookgames.bsky.social and at silverspookguy for my personal takes on stuff. And you can also follow on Mastodon at silverspookgames at wandering.shop and or at silverspookgames at mastodon.social on Mastodon. And we're also on Twitter as well. I'm trying to figure out which platforms are working and like where people are finding my stuff. So there's still a lot of stuff that is on Twitter, but it's like it's stuff is getting more and more. It has been variously broken and not great, and it's still not great. So I'm spending definitely less time there. But you can follow at silverspookguy and at silverspookgames minus Ian Silver. You can also follow Holly. It's weird. Like my Silverspook Games shows me all like viral medical related stuff now, and the Silverspook guy is all like the same post about. I mean, the same post about Asia, like from 50 different people. It's like what's going on there? Anyways, you can follow Holly at Allergic to Blue, Married to Myself, our great moderator. Holly's also voice acting in Neofeud 2 right now, so that's doing a good job. Soon we'll be wrapping our line, sharing important information. Hey, keep your brain and your body functional. Follow that information. And also, of course, thank you so much to all of our patrons. Without your Patreon patron, it's hard for us to keep doing this work. So thank you so much for all of your Patreon patronage. Massively appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I was like, who are we going to raid into? Like, no, I'm not raiding nobody. Thank you very much. And also, of course, keep mirror sage polished. Be excellent to each other. Don't use too much Degen AI. Keep your brain. Keep your intellectual creative self going. Exercise it, or you use it or lose it. I mean, like literally, it's very sad. I can't. So it makes me so sad. I'm like, let's not completely self-lobotomize for our horrible billionaire evil overlords. Okay,